Let's see how to build this helpdesk app in Plasmic, a low-code development platform. Users can create tickets and admins can manage these and respond to the users. This is intended to be a pretty simple multi-page application for you to learn a lot of the basic pillars in Plasmic. First, let's take a tour of the finished product. The first time we log in, we are asked to fill out some basic profile information. As a normal user, I can log in and see a list of my requests that I filed in the past and what their status is, including both the in progress and completed ones. I can click into one of these. Here I can see the details of the ticket as well as an activity log down here, which includes a comment thread where I can post more comments as well. I can also go ahead and create a new ticket. That takes us directly to the new page. As an admin, I can check out a list of all tickets across all users, and I can use these controls to filter to specific types of tickets, such as just the in-progress ones or ones assigned to certain users or with certain tags. If I click into one of these tickets, then here I have a similar view to what the normal users see, except that I can also make changes, these updates to, for instance, who it's assigned to, what it's tagged with, and also the status of the ticket. At the bottom, I can also participate in the thread here as well. And finally, there's this simple dashboard page where I can get a summary view of the progress across all tickets. This app is also fully responsive, so you can use it on mobile as well. And that's it. This is intended to be a pretty simple multi-page application for you to learn a lot of the basic pillars in Plasmic, and that includes database integration, user logins, permissions, dynamic pages like the ticket details pages, components like tables and charts and date pickers, and so on. Now let's take a look at how we built this app. At the heart of any application is the database. And so here we're looking at the database schema. This is a Postgres database, and you can set up a Postgres database in a provider like Supabase, which is nice because it has this visual editor for creating your tables. It doesn't require you to write SQL or code. So if we look, here we have the users table, and this is basically just a simple list of users and their first name and last name. We have a table of tickets, and all these tables are populated with some fake dummy data. And this is handy to get started building the app because you don't have any data yet, but you want to start being able to build out what the UIs look like, and you need to base that on some data. And here we have the comments table, which are attached to tickets. So a very simple schema. All right, let's head over into Plasmic. And this is what you see when you create a blank new application in Plasmic. You get some default page layout and a couple other things. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our users. So if we go to the View As menu here, we don't have any users defined. So let's go ahead and create some. And here, this is where you can start inviting people into your app. So I'm going to invite myself into the app. And when you invite people, you can choose what kind of role you want to invite them in. And we have two default roles that it comes out of the box with, admins and normal users. This actually lines up really well with our app, where we also wanted a notion of admins and normal users. We'll take a look at how you can configure that in a second. Let's go ahead and add. And now I'm listed in this permissions list. In Plasmic, you can have private apps and public apps. So this is an example of a private app where it's not just something where anyone in the world should be able to come and sign up and create an account. I actually have an explicit list of users that I want to give access to. And everyone else, which is general access, I'm going to deny. Now in our database, we also had a few other fake users, such as user1@gmail.com and user2@gmail.com. And these were normal users. And we also had a couple of fake admin users. If we head over to the settings tab, this is where we can define what our roles are. And roles are always ordered from highest privilege to lowest privilege. So anything that a normal user can do, an admin user can also do. All right, so that's it for managing users. Now the next initial simple thing that we can do, which is a little fun, is to set up the theming for our app. If we go over into the project settings, we can find the Ant Design System settings here. And the Ant Design System is basically the library of components that you start with, that you can build out your application with. So that includes buttons, selects, menus, and so on. And they're all based on these color tokens. So we can choose the primary color here to be this dark teal color, and that affects everything from these nav menus to buttons. Maybe the only other thing I'll do as well is to set the default typography under the theme settings. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Work Sans as our default font everywhere. That's it. Now for this app, we're intentionally keeping things very simple from a design perspective. We're mostly using off-the-shelf components and not going crazy with bespoke, spacing and layout and typography and whatnot. Plasmic does have very, very deep design capabilities for building beautiful websites and applications that we're not going to touch at all here. The point of this exercise is to just slap something together really quick and have it look good out of the box. All right, with that, we can start building out our main page that's displaying all my tickets. So for this, we can insert a table. And for the data, we can say we want to add a new query. Now this query, we're going to call it my tickets. And it's basically here that we can choose what we want to query over. So we're going to want to query from the table of tickets. And we want to grab all the tickets where the created by is the currently logged in user. I'm going to get their ID. We can preview what that returns. All right, so in this case, this user, myself, I only created one ticket. So that's why this is the only thing showing up. So if I go ahead and save this, now this is what will show up in the table. And now we can configure what are the columns we actually want to show or hide in this table and how we want them formatted. All right, so now we've gone ahead and done some more work on this page where we've split it out into two different tables, one for showing open tickets and the other for closed tickets. And we've also configured each table to have certain columns displayed and formatted a certain way. All right, the next thing we want to do is create our ticket details page. And we can do this by creating a dynamic page. We're going to use this wizard to set things up. And a dynamic page is basically any page where the URL of the page takes a variable. And based on this variable, that's the information we're going to show. So for instance, in this case, we want to take the ID of the ticket and then show the details of that particular ticket. So this wizard lets us say that we want to query the tickets table and we want to query it by its ID. That's the variable that we're going to use. So let's go ahead and create this, and automatically it's going to set up a number of things. So if we look at the page data tab, we can see that it's using this URL pattern /tickets/some ID. And the ID that we're previewing right now in the canvas is this one. And we can take a look at what this is from this browser here. So this shows us all the tickets that are available in our database, and we can switch to a different one if we want. Currently, we're looking at this one, which is about having forgotten your password. So that's why on the content of the page as well, Plasmic has automatically inserted a title field that is wired up to that query result. So if we switch to a different record, for instance, this one, issue with software update, we're going to see the details of that ticket here as well. So that's how this works. From here, we can start wiring up other parts of the page. So for instance, this body text here, I can go ahead and set its content using dynamic values as well to that query results description field. So this is the description of it. And we can also add some more fields as well. So let's say we want to show when this was created. Let's go ahead and add a text for when this ticket was created. All right, so this doesn't look very nice because this is an ISO timestamp, but what we can do is everywhere you use a dynamic value, you can also drop in a snippet of JavaScript code. So in this case, I'm using this snippet here, which formats it a little bit more nicely like so. And you can get snippets like this by also just asking the AI Copilot for something helpful here. All right, and if I want to add just a little bit of layout here, I want to display some metadata fields like this creation time in a grid. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a grid layout, and this has a number of boxes, and I can select this whole thing and I can say I actually want this to have 4 columns, and I want to put this created at in the last one. I'm also going to add a text here saying created at, and I'm going to set the shading background of this to be this off-white gray. And I can do the same thing with this first field where I want it to show created by. And we're going to set this to be light gray as well. And here we're going to insert some text to show the information about the user who created this issue. Now for that, if we try to wire this up to the data directly based on what we have right now, we actually see that the only thing we know is the ID of the user that created this. We don't know any other information about them. So we need another query to fetch the information about that user that's pointed to by this created by ID. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the page data tab. First, let's rename this query to be called ticket. And then let's create a second query here, which is for the user of the ticket. And actually, let's call this one author, just to be more clear. And we're going to query the users table where the ID is, and then we can say it's the tickets created by field. That's the user we want to fetch. All right, so that's the author of this ticket. Let's go ahead and save this. And now with this text element, we can display that author's, let's say, their first name. Maybe the last thing I'll do is also add a little bit of border around each one. Now this grid on mobile, we actually want it to look a little bit differently. So with responsive design in Plasmic, you can just say, I'm going to switch to mobile. And on mobile, I actually want this grid to have 2 columns instead of 4. And then everything will wrap around and be laid out how we want. The only other part of this page for now is the activities log. So let's go ahead and add a heading. That's an H2, call it activities. And under that, we're going to start adding the comments. So the comments, let's first create what a comment should look like. We're going to add a vertical stack. And inside of this vertical stack, let's have some text for the user's name and the body of the comment here, something like this. This is what we want. And we want this repeated over and over for every comment. So now let's fetch the actual comments. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create another database query here. This is for our comments table. And we want to grab all comments where the ticket ID is the ID that was specified in the page URL here. So that's the ID of the ticket we care about. And we're also going to call this thing comments. Let's preview what this looks like. So this ticket has a number of comments already for it. Let's go ahead and save this. And now with that box selected, we can make it repeat according to some data. And the data is going to be this list of comments. So we want this to repeat based on the comments. So now we have one box per comment, and within each box, we can select one of these text elements and wire it up to current item.comment. All right, and then we also have this user's name. But again, we don't have the actual name of the user who authored this comment. We just have their ID. So we need to go and fetch the information about that user in order to display their name. So one way we can do this is by right-clicking this box and creating a component out of it. So components are reusable building blocks in our application. And we're going to call this one comment. So wherever we want a comment, we can just insert one of these. If we double click into it, now we're editing this component. And so we can, make adjustments, and any adjustments will affect all instances of that component, including these other guys on the page. Inside of this component, we can add more queries. So in the right, we can add data queries that are specifically for this component. And so we're going to query the users table where the ID is equal to the current item's author ID here. That looks right. And let's make this text element actually display that data. So we're going to display the first name field, let's say, of that author. And so that's how you can start building out a comment section like this. Now for these comments, You'll want just a little bit more information like the user's last name and the timestamp, but this is just a skeleton to show you how the data actually works. The last thing we want to do here is add a form. This is how the currently logged in user can add a comment as well. So for this form, we just need a single field for the message. So now if the user fills in some information like this, then we want to be able to add that as a comment into this thread. So when the user presses submit, this is what we want to have happen. We want to use our database integration, and we want to create a row in the comments table. And this row, we want it to have an author that is the currently logged in user. So we're getting their ID. For the comment body itself, this is going to come from our form, the message field. The creation timestamp we can actually leave blank because this is actually going to be automatically filled in on the database side. That's just part of our schema. And so is the ID of this comment. It's just going to be randomly generated by the database. And for the ticket ID, we want this to come from that URL. All right, so that's it. One more step here is after we've submitted that data, we also want to clear out the fields of this form. So if we test this out, there we have our comment automatically showing up. And this is just automatic out of the box with Plasmic. When you make changes to your data, things will refresh on the page automatically. The last page for normal users is this new tickets page. And this is just a form where it has two fields, a title field and a description field. When the form is submitted, we do two things. One is we create a row in the database. We say it's created by the currently logged in user. We fill in the description that was from the form. We fill in the title that was from the form. And we set the status to open. All the other fields are automatically populated by the database, including the ID. Now, as a second step, right after the ticket is created in the database, we take the user to the ticket details page for that newly created ticket. So this is the ticket details page that we just created. And as the ID, we are filling in the result of this step. This step returns to us the newly created rows, and we can grab the ID off that newly created row. All right, let's turn to the admin pages. So the all tickets page is really similar to the my tickets page, except that it has these filters at the top for the assignee, status, and tags. Now, if we take a look at the simplest one of these, which is the status filter, because its options are these three hard-coded values, the name of this select is called status filter. And if we interact with it, we can see all these interactive components, they have state. So the state of this is that it has open and in progress checked. And we can also inspect the state of the page by going to the page data tab and seeing, okay, here's a status filter and its values are open and in progress. Now, the way that the table makes use of this data is the query for all the tickets. We saw how you can click to query for data, but you can also write custom SQL, and this is helpful for more complex queries. But here we're querying for all tickets where the status of it is any of the values inside of our status filter select. So if we click this, we can inspect, this is the current value of that status filter. It has open and in progress checked. And so this is how you can match against any of those values in SQL. And we do something similar for the other filters as well. Now, these other selects are a little more complex because they're not these simple lists of options. They actually have a list of options that comes from the database as well. So we need additional database queries to figure out what are the options to list. For the users, we have this query here, which is just querying for all users from the database where the email ends with @example.com. So that's just how we're determining who is a support user that you can assign things to. For the ticket details page, it looks a little bit different than before because now as an admin user, when we're viewing it as an admin user, we can see some additional fields here. And these are just standalone selects that directly update the database data. So they're not part of any form. Updates don't always have to come in forms. Here we have this on-change interaction that we've added to the select. So anytime that you're changing a value, we're going to go ahead and directly make an update to the database without you needing to click a submit button anywhere. And then we show a notification at the end. We also have this drop down here where for normal users, it's actually disabled, so you can't change it. But as an admin user, I can't actually change its status to one of these other values. The last page we'll take a look at is the dashboard page. This is actually a really simple page. It's mostly just displaying information. Here we have some stats, which are just displaying numbers. And we also have these chart components, which are built-in components. And the queries that power all of these are listed here. If we take a look at one of these, for instance, the new tickets over time, we can see that this query, it's actually making use of something on the page called date range. And that's the name of our date range picker over here. So as you select different values for the date range, then the data will update accordingly. So that's how you can build these reactive user interfaces where changing something on the screen can affect a bunch of other things. The last thing I'll mention is the registration flow. So when a new user signs up, they're redirected to this page, and they keep getting redirected to this page even if they try clicking through to the other links until they fill out this profile and submit it. So the way that works is beyond the scope of this video, but we have another video that covers this in depth, how to create a user registration flow like this. Okay, that pretty much covers the highlights of what went into building this app. This is just scratching the surface of Plasmic. So far, we've shown how you can use the low-code side of things, but one of the things that makes Plasmic really special is that it can integrate with code bases. And so you can hook this into your existing large React application and bring in your existing React components even as building blocks to use within Plasmic, or vice versa, creating new components that the rest of your code base can use. This bridging of no code and code is what lets Plasmic scale to very complex applications and what lets you truly build without limits. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop a comment in the section below or ping us on our Slack community. Thanks for watching, and we can't wait to see what you build.